You've seen the work we put in and day out, challenging myths, debunking old wives' tales, and exposing poor breeding practices. Ugh. We spent years researching, studying, and applying real-world experiences to perfect the art of science of breeding. Why? Because you deserve the best, most accurate information out there. But to keep this mission alive and growing, we need your support. If you found value in the Bred to Perfection live show, take a moment, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share our content. It may seem small, but every like, every subscriber, and every share helps us reach more breeders who need to hear the truth, who want to learn what it really takes to create, maintain, and improve high-quality strains. This isn't just a YouTube channel, it's a movement, and you're a vital part of it. If you believe in what we're doing, if you want to help others discover the power of true breeding, help push this channel to the top. Like, subscribe, and share. Together, we make a difference. Thank you for standing with us. Now, let's get to work. Entertaining, informative, and educational. Inspiring content that makes a difference.
This is the Maximus Troy Publications Broadcasting Network.
Join the Academy. This show is brought to you by the Breeders Academy, where we will help you to increase your knowledge of breeding, advance your skills as a breeder, and help you to improve the quality and performance of your fowl.
As a member, I'll provide you a roadmap that you will need to create a true family or strain. Starting with a cock from one breeder and a hen from another breeder, no problem. We can help you to turn your flock of hybrid crosses or mongrels into a pure family or strain, and show you how to continually improve that strain each generation. We'll start by showing you how to select your seed fowl and how to turn that seed fowl into a high-quality foundation strain. Our proven breeding programs and specialty courses are designed to take you step by step through the breeding process. And best of all, I'll be there to help you every step of the way.
We urge you to check it out. You have nothing to lose, and you can cancel at any time. You also have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Simply go to www.breedersacademy.com to sign up.
The Breeders Academy will not only change the way you think about breeding, but improve the way you breed your fowl. Okay, welcome to another episode of Bred to Perfection. I'm Kenny Troiano with my wife Nancy, and our guest is Dr. Rodrigo Gallardo. How you doing?
Hello, doing good. Thank you.
So what's up? Anything new?
Well, other than our program, which is not new, and we would like to keep it going forever, hopefully.
Yeah, you want to talk
For
about that?
yes, so the program is the what we call the Gamefowl Wellness Program, which is mostly focused on Southern California. We do services, veterinary services for gamefowl owners, mainly breeders. That includes not only veterinary services whenever you guys need us for diagnosis or sometimes treatment if it's needed, but also prevention for Newcastle disease, either biosecurity and also vaccination. One of the fun things that we've been doing the last year is to test different generation of vaccines. These what we're testing now is a recombinant vaccine that actually has the capability of protecting against Marek's disease and Newcastle disease.
Oh,
So we're hoping that we tested it in adult chickens, and of course, it can protect against Marek's when they are adults because they need to be vaccinated early in their lives. But we're hoping that we will be able to test it with one breeder during this the next season, hatching season, at day of age or at week of age in his hatch, and see how we can protect against both of those diseases.
so is it growing? Getting a lot of people in there, or is it?
Well, to be honest with you, we have close to 250 members. The active members are usually the same people, let's say 20, 30 breeders. Um, I would like it to grow more, because that's the only way in which we can justify to USDA that this is important, right? And USDA funds the program. So part of me being here is to promote that and make sure that we can get more members.
For some people that haven't heard about your program or know anything about it, can you give us a little bit of history? Why did you even start this program in the first place?
Yes. So I don't think I've ever told you guys about that, but so I work at the University of California, and my position is paid by the poultry industry. So the poultry industry usually worries about having exotic diseases here in the state because they cannot export, right? So one of those is Newcastle disease, and we've had outbreaks of Newcastle disease. I don't want to say periodically, but every some years here in California, and whenever that happens, a lot of birds need to be depopulated. Not only
Oh, he froze up again. Let's see if he comes back. This happened earlier, and there he is.
am I there?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you
here
are.
now.
I'm not sure what's happening with my Wi-Fi. I'm at the university; it should be stable.
Okay.
So I was telling the audience that it started with Newcastle disease and the need for preventing Newcastle disease in general. And usually small flocks get affected first, and then they amplify infection and they send it to commercial poultry. So that's the story. The state actually funded in the starting of the program, and then USDA got interested, and not only because of vaccination capabilities for these small flocks, but also to train and to educate people. And they've been funding it for 5 years, so it's an important program for them, and I would like to keep it that way.
I do hope it grows because I think if we don't nurture some kind of program like this and get people involved, we are going to get hit with Newcastle's disease again because I think it's just inevitable. Birds are being passed or they travel from the United States to Mexico, Mexico to the United States, and it's just a matter of time before we face it again. And it's not only devastating to our strains and our fowl, but it's expensive and it leads to worse things later if we're not careful. So
Yeah, it's bad for everyone. So
yeah.
these kind of programs help people prepare, right? I mean, it's preparedness and prevention. So that's the kind of medicine we want to do in chickens, right? I mean, prevention for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it eventually it interrupts our food source. Especially
That
when
too,
it
yeah.
hits the commercial flock industry. So, yeah. And
Even influenza, right? I
everyone
mean that.
eats chicken.
Yeah.
So,
Same with avian influenza. We had these egg cartons at $12 a couple of months ago. Well, that's because I mean our food source gets affected by disease.
Yeah.
yes.
So today's an interesting one because it's something that I only know a little bit about because we don't see it very often, or I didn't think we did. It was something that I just thought that it was something that was very rare. But every time I turn around, I have either have a member or a follower get a hold of me and saying they had their birds tested. It came to they found out that it had leukosis,
And you
or
know
they
why? You know why is that? Because it
what?
gets really confused with Marek's disease. Like
Yeah,
any tumoral disease, people just calls it Marek's, and that's it. And since we don't send many birds to the lab, we don't really know what it was.
and
So,
that's what it seems like to me too. Is that they're confusing it with Merrick's, and when they started describing it to me, I go, well, in some ways it sounds like Merrick's, but in some ways it doesn't. And so it was confusing people. And it was like, if they didn't have it, they knew someone who did. And I was like, wow, this is more common than I thought. And this is even more devastating than Merrick's.
yeah.
So I think let's talk about that today. So, why does this matter to breeders? Leukosis.
So this is one of the diseases that gets vertically transmitted. So transmitted by egg. Some people mentions it. So let me go back a little bit to understand. For me, it's usually important to understand what causes the
Sure.
diseases in order to have a clear idea and then try to come up with preventative strategies. Because if we don't understand how it induces disease, it's really difficult to block it, right?
Uh-oh, froze again. Hold on, Dr. Gallardo, if you can hear us. There he is.
I can hear you guys. Not sure
Okay.
Okay.
what's going on, but well, it's a viral disease, so it's a disease that is caused by a virus, just like Marek's, right? So Marek's is a herpes virus, and this is a retrovirus. And retroviruses are complicated because they are able to get inserted into the genome of the chicken. What that means is that if you're able to sequence the chicken genome, you'll find pieces that belong to these viruses. And one of the repercussions of that is that the chickens doesn't really recognize them as a virus, but they recognize them as part of themselves. So you
Whoa.
have these chickens that are able to transmit the disease vertically, uh, and also chickens that are able to get infected, but they don't mount an immune response and they don't even get sick. They're actually able to this virus is able to replicate on them because their immune system doesn't see it, and then it gets shed in high quantities. So that's the biggest problem, right? And what makes this virus really really good in what it does, they can infect chickens. It can get vertically transmitted by the egg, and also there's this uh, persistently viremic chickens, which means that they have a virus that they're shedding all the time inside flocks.
So it's
So
Jeez.
vertical and horizontal, would you
it's
say?
vertical and horizontal, and usually the horizontal part is not that great. But when you have a lot of virus in the environment, it becomes good too.
So it's like, if it's vertical, how do you get rid of it?
In the commercial industry, people what people does is to test their breeders and then eliminate the ones that are positive. In that way, they prevent the virus to get transmitted vertically. It's not all the birds that are positive in the breeder side. Some of them are positive, and also not all the positives are releasing the virus vertically. Only some of them. So I mean, it's very important for the introduction, and then the dissemination. It's made horizontally. So it has a very good strategy, right? I mean, in terms of infecting flocks. So in the commercial industry, we just test them. You get rid of the ones that are positive, and you make sure that there's no introduction of the virus in the progeny, right? Which is the ones that we use for human consumption or for eggs.
So
Is
if go ahead,
is
Nancy.
there are there any of the flock that are resistant to this virus?
Well, that's a great question. So the immunologically chickens are a little bit different, right? Just like humans, and we all have repertoires of immune responses that are a bit different. Some chickens that have certain components of the immune system might be resistant if you compare them with others that 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 are susceptible, right? But but since we assume that these parameters, which is the major histocompatibility complex, probably too much to discuss here, but whenever you think about these flocks, you assume that there's crosses that have different components of this MHC and different levels of susceptibility and resistance in every flock.
So we go on with our day. We're taking care of our chickens. Everything seems fine. So there would be no reason to really test them to see if they have this until we start seeing symptoms.
Yeah.
Okay. So what does that mean? Whenever we're going to breed birds, we have to, how are we going to test those birds to know if they carry it so that we can go forward with them?
I mean, you hit right in the target, right? I mean, there's no easy or available way of. There's an easy way to check them. There's no available way in most of the cases to check birds if they're positive or not. And the other complexity is that while this virus gets transmitted vertically to chicks, the disease actually occurs after 18 weeks of age, after 16 actually. So whenever they become puber, there's something that happens in the chicken that allows this virus to replicate in a higher rate, right? Now, compared with Marek's disease, in which it is assumed that it affects chickens earlier in their life, until 16 weeks of age, this virus starts replicating and produces disease after 16 weeks of age. So that's one of the ways in which you can differentiate between Marek's and leukosis. That having that said, that's not clean cut. Sometimes it happens that Marek's occurs later in the life of the chickens, and we call it late Marek's, right? The other difference between Marek's and leukosis is that Marek's is a T cell lymphoid tumor generation, and leukosis is a B cell generated tumor. So what happens, like if you think about the physiology of the chicken, is that whenever there's leukosis, this virus goes into the bursa fabricius, and that's one of the reasons why the ages, right? Because whenever they become puber, that bursa fabricius disappears. So it goes before 16 weeks of age, replicates, and then causes metastasis or tumor metastasis in other organs. So what you see usually is birds that have tumors in their organs and not in the bursa fabricius because, the bursa fabricius is gone. Or you see a persistence of the bursa fabricius because there's only tumor and then tumors in the other organs. In Marek's disease, you see tumors that are primary from the organs, and sometimes they metastasize into the bursa fabricius.
Yeah, because okay, so what? I mean, you just said some of them, but so what are the biggest differences between Marek's and leukosis, so we can tell the difference? Because lameness, that's not leukosis, is it?
So lameness, it could be because some of these viruses are able to metastasize in the bones, and they cause this osteopetrosis, which is tumors in the bone. You don't see much of that in Marek's disease, but if you want to differentiate them, the differentiation is not 100% clean because it's biology, right? I mean, it's messy, but in general, Marek's produces disease early in the life of the chickens, before 16 weeks. Lymphoid leukosis produces disease later in the life of the chickens, so after 16 weeks of age.
Typically.
And then Marek's is a T cell tumor, induces T cell tumors. Leukosis induces a B cell tumors, right? Then if you send samples to the laboratory, they might be able to do cuts on tumors and then look at them at the microscope, and they'll be able to differentiate. Now, in terms of prevention, right, it's that important. I would think it is because you need to vaccinate against Marek's, right? But then there's no real vaccine for leukosis because it's a virus that changes too much. Retroviruses are the ones that, they have mutations and recombinations all the time. So if you come up with a vaccine, that vaccine will be obsolete pretty quick because the virus will be uh,
Have
evolving,
mutated. Yeah.
escaping from the vaccine.
So does it go back to, for the most part, breeding to the healthy, cull the sick? Is that all you can really do?
That's one of the things, but also if your progeny is suffering from leukosis, right? If you're able to send all your mortality to the lab and then they tell you that you're having leukosis, you need to look into your breeders in order to see if you have certain positive birds that you might be able to avoid breeding or call in order to eliminate or eradicate the disease. Actually, when you read textbooks and they talk about leukosis, there's no treatment, right? So the only treatment is actually eradicating the disease. So eliminating the birds that are positive in order to prevent them to vertically disseminate the disease.
I read something where you can test the eggs of the breeders.
Yeah. So you can test serum or you can test the eggs, the white, egg white. And what you're looking there is for antibodies against leukosis, right? And there's kits, there's ELISA kits, and there's other things you can do.
Is there different types of leukosis?
Yeah, well, that's another complexity, right? So there's 10 different types, and they name them from A to J. And depending on the different type, they'll have different clinical presentations and different capabilities of the virus to do different things, right? For example, the type E is endogenous, meaning that it's the one that it's able to go and get inserted into the genome of the chicken, and that's the one that most of the times generates these birds that are permanently viremic. So the ones that are shedding the virus all the time without even being able to mount an immune response. So they get infected and then they shed the virus all the time, all their life, but they don't look sick, and they're not sick because their immune system cannot see the virus. It recognizes it as part of themselves.
Yeah. So biosecurity in this case is non-negotiable. I mean, Merrick's, we're to the point now. There was the time when Merrick's was pretty bad. It would kill a lot of farms. It would massive destruction. But now most farms, they only see it a little here and there. It's ubiquitous, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And like on my farm, I've only seen it maybe a dozen times in the whole time I've had birds here. And it was only like one bird here and there, but this one would be a bigger deal. So
It's usually, so it's a strange disease because you see also what you described for Marx. You see kind of like a dripping. You see 2 birds, 3 birds, and then sometimes you see
Yeah.
5, and then you don't see it next year, and then you see it again. So it induces mortality. In commercial poultry, we say that it's also associated with reduced production, right? So less eggs, but it lingers. It's nothing that will kill your whole flock at the same time, like avian influenza or Newcastle disease. But these diseases are difficult to control and difficult to diagnose because they linger there and they cause silent mortality and silent clinical signs.
yeah,
So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's strange. It's just one of those things that you need to be aware and make sure that you send birds to the lab in order to get further investigation and name what the problem is.
Everything I looked up, the 2 words I kept hearing over and over again is it's a sneaky disease and it's a silent disease.
Yeah.
But it moves slowly and does massive destruction.
Yeah, the problem is that whenever you have it in your breeders, you assume that you will always have it, unless you're able to test all those breeders and make and eradicate the disease from your breeders.
Okay, that brings up a good question. Is a backyard flock person, how are they going to test their birds? Do they pick each bird up individually and look for signs?
So no, so you need to do lab testing, laboratory. So basically, you can collect blood and then send it to the state laboratory and ask
Okay.
them to look for ALV antibodies or leukosis antibodies. I'm not completely sure if they have that test here in California. That's something that you guys can ask in any state that you are, and whenever they are positive, that means that they were exposed to the virus. So there's a high chance that they're able also to shed it because of this permanently viremic, or this introduction of the virus to the genome. So I would just eliminate the birds that are positive.
Well,
And then an infected area, how do you clean that?
Yeah, so these retroviruses are difficult to get rid of, right? They probably the best way to go is to change the area, right? I mean, uh, whenever you do eradication, just move the places where you have your cages and stuff, and then get rid of certain inches of the soil, and then do cleaning and disinfection. Part of the problem of small flocks, or game fowl in this case, is that we need to disinfect places that are not disinfectable, right? And viruses that hang around forever. So
Yeah.
so we're talking about from the most part, right? I mean, when we talk about control, is reduction of the challenge rather than elimination of the pathogen. In this case, is elimination. So I might even think about moving my birds from one place to the other. So it's not an easy thing to control, to be honest with you.
now you said the commercial industry, they pretty much eradicated it. How'd they do it?
I mean, there's different. The scenario is different because, for example, in broilers live 45 days, 45 or 50 days. So, as I said before, this is a disease that affects chickens after 16 weeks of age. So you really don't see it. The only thing that the only leukosis you can see in broilers is ALVJ. ALVJ causes a disease that is called myelocytomatosis, which is a disease that affects the liver, and it actually affects chickens, younger chickens, and it's also vertically transmitted. But that got eradicated whenever it started happening, and that means eliminating the breeders that are positive, but then those breeders are in places where you can clean and disinfect effectively, right? In the case of layers, there's a lot of work that has been done in terms of susceptibility. So lots of crosses that allows these breeders to be somewhat resistant to the disease, and then also testing in order to eliminate the ones that are positive. That's why you don't really see them, even though every once in a while we see cases of avian leukosis, just like you describe them, one or two birds, from a flock of 30,000, which no one cares, right? But it's also important to keep it in the back of your mind, right? Because it might be a time in which this thing can explode. Other countries where genetics are a little bit different, they don't have the lines that we have here in the U.S., Asia, maybe India, China. They have other breeds that are more affected by ALV because they haven't done the job of eradication.
So they have strict their breeding lines, they're controlled.
Yep.
Obviously, okay. High biosecurity. So we need to practice that. That's what we need to do. We need to protect our lines and create really good biosecurity.
I think if you start with a solid, healthy breeder flock, where the source of those birds, and that they haven't been infected by anything terrible, your progeny will be much more clean and disease free than when you are bringing birds from different places without testing them, uh, selling and buying all the time birds. I'm not saying that you need to have a closed flock because that's impractical for some gamefowl breeders, but you need to make sure that whatever you're bringing, it's as healthy as your less healthy bird, right? So you need to make sure that it's like your family, right? I mean, you won't be bringing someone that you don't trust. Well, same thing here. You won't be bringing birds that are sick to your flock because those birds can get sick also. And there's nothing wrong on testing, right? You can actually buy birds upon testing. So you can tell whoever is selling you the bird, like, oh, okay, we'll check for mycoplasma, and if they're negative, I'll buy them. And if not, well, I'll look for another bird, right?
Well, one of the biggest problems is a lot of breeders aren't honest. If the bird looks healthy, they're going to pass it on and try to get as much money as they can. But here's what I see a lot of, and I see it especially in the domestic world, where they say, okay, I want to breed, let's say Summers. Okay. But I'm not just going to go find one breeder that has a good reputation and get, let's say, a pair of trio and start a strain from that. I'm going to get Summers from 6 different breeders, breed them all into one, and create my own strain. All the genetic diversity that's involved with that, all the different hidden defects and deleterious genes and sicknesses hidden that. It's like a genetic soup at that point.
Yeah.
So there's no telling where it comes from. I see that a lot.
So just mixing without even knowing what the background is.
Yeah, thinking that they're getting the best of all these different worlds and putting it into one strain and getting, instead of finding the best breeder, getting the best birds they can, just going from there, moving forward, they create this genetic soup by thinking that they're benefiting by improving genetic diversity by getting all these different birds from different breeders, which they don't realize what's hiding underneath those, including sickness.
I mean, it's part of human nature, right? I mean, you're focused on whatever you want at the end, what the final product is. But there's a process. If you don't care about the process, your final product will be terrible. And that happens in every sense of life, right? So let's think more about prevention than what the outcome is or what
Yeah, because not only do these different birds have different genetic defects hiding within them, but this one could have Merrick's. This one could have leukosis. This one could have coryza hiding within them, mycoplasma. Then you bring them all into one. Now you've got all those.
Exactly.
I see that all the time. But leukosis is kind of scary because it's, like they say, it's a sneaky disease.
It is.
Yeah, and a lot of people are putting it on their yards these days, and they're not knowing what they have, and they're just passing it off as, oh, it's just Merrick's, And so I think I wanted to make this I wanted to make people aware of this because I think I don't think they really know what they got, and if they're thinking it's Merrick's, this could get really bad fast.
Yep.
So, you have any other questions, Nancy?
Yeah. So can it be transmitted to humans?
Not to humans. This is a chicken disease. There's some of the types of leukosis. I don't remember exactly which types. I mean, between A and J, right? Because there's 10 different types. Some of them can affect other species of birds, but no humans, no primates or humans or other animals.
Okay, I kind of think we answered this question, but I'll pull it up just in case. I guess just cull and move forward with what survives. Can you breed your birds to where they are resistant to Merrick's, or is it any chicken that can get it? And same with leukosis.
So maybe I'll need to explain a little bit the MHC, and then we can all be in the same place. And I'll try to do it really, really easy. And maybe Kenny wants to help me if I'm being too complicated.
Well, don't hold back, because a lot of my followers and my members, they're more sophisticated than the average person. I mean, we're in here to learn about breeding and everything that it consists of. So don't worry about that.
So chickens, like in humans, you usually see repertoires of resistance to diseases. And that's because the MHC, which is one of the arms of these cells that are able to get detected by the epitope, which is a piece of protein from the pathogen, right? So this MHC is an arm that it's able to recognize the pathogen or a certain piece of the pathogen. But there's different MHCs, so meaning that they can recognize different peptides or different pieces of pathogens. And depending on the piece of pathogen that you detect, you'll be more resistant or more susceptible to a disease, right? So that's immunology. In chickens, the MHC is determined by one gene loci, and then in humans by several. So whenever you look into resistance to diseases in humans, you have different repertoires of disease from resistant to susceptible, but passing through all the susceptibilities and resistant. So you might see people that is a little bit resistant to a disease, and some other people that is a little bit more. In chickens, what happens is that you have a more defined resistance and susceptibilities. So that's why back in the 70s, people started investigating MHCs, trying to breed in resistant to commercial chickens, right? And the model virus that they used was Marek's disease, because it was a severe problem on at that time, and they wanted eradicated from commercial poultry. Well, they were not able to eradicate it, but they were able to generate lines that are much less susceptible to Marek's disease, and that was usually doing crosses that privilege certain MHC types that were more resistant. So could you make chickens fully resistant? Probably not. Could you make chickens more resistant to Marex? Yes. And the only way of doing it is just knowing this MHC and trying to do crosses that makes the MHC that is more resistant. There's different. I don't even remember. I think the B haplotype 19 and the 21 are resistant. 2 is susceptible, but I'm not really sure. With leukosis is similar, right? But the interactions are different. So not because your chicken is resistant to Marex, it will be resistant to leukosis or to other diseases, right? So that's why it's super important not to only focus on only one MHC and keeping your lines with one MHC, but rather they need to have some variability in order to protect against other diseases.
I think the best, and maybe the only way to really get true resistance is to hatch. It's always about the numbers for me. It's hatch as many birds as you can, and they all drink from the same fountains. They all drink from the same, eat from the same troughs or whatever. And it's the ones. It's not the ones that get sick and get better. It's the ones that just never get sick, and those are the ones you need to breed to.
Yeah, and you're breeding for strength there and for resilience, which is something that it's done and it's effective. Now, don't ever think that your chickens will never get sick,
Right.
because they will get sick, right? Especially when you make them commingle with other birds and they all drink from the same water and they all eat from the same feed. And but also think that most of those diseases are human caused, right? So we because of the management we do, we predispose chickens to get sick. Not all the diseases are linked with viruses or bacteria. There's a lot of management issues that actually makes chickens more susceptible to catch a cold or catch some virus or bacteria. So the first thing, right, for every producer or breeder is to do their own part in terms of management and biosecurity, that and feeding, right? That's Those three things are key in order to have healthy flocks. And if you have issues with one of those, you might be you might be more susceptible to disease.
Yeah. I always say the three-legged stool is the environment and how you manage them, nutrition and health, and then genetics and how you select them. Each of them being a different leg on the stool. And if any of those are missing, it's just not going to make it. So you got to be an all-round breeder. You got to be an all-round
Exactly.
husbandry. But no, I understand that they're never going to be resistant to all the diseases. So you got to manage the ones that are in your yard, and you've got to prevent new ones as much as possible.
And that's a really key point, right? What it's in your yard not necessarily is what it's in the other's yard. So don't copy strategies of especially vaccination programs. Like those are not. I mean, you probably know someone that does everything perfect, and he or she has their own vaccination program that it's really helpful and prevents disease for them. But that vaccination program probably won't work in your flock because your flock has different complexities, different birds, different exposure to disease. The epidemiology is different. So we need to craft our own program, our own disease prevention program ourselves. And we can share knowledge, but that doesn't mean that you can copy everything. I see a lot of that in not only in small flocks, but also in big companies, in which they just everybody talks, right? So they go like, how you're controlling infectious bronchitis? Well, I use this program, right? So then This other company starts using that program, and then they generate disease because they're not using these vaccines appropriately. So it might be that in Georgia, for example, there's a need for using a bronchitis vaccine because a producer lives close to a commercial poultry facility, and that's okay. But if it works for him, it probably won't work here in California, where gamefowl is not commingling with commercial poultry, right? So those are things that we need to keep in mind, and if you don't understand it, you need to look for help, right? That's why our program exists, right? Because we help every producer that we work with to come up with their own prevention strategy for diseases, thinking about their own complexities and their own their own flocks, right?
Well, what I see most of the time is the vaccination program that's most popular, and a lot of people doing it, is they vaccinate for everything. Any vaccine they can get, that's what they're going to vaccinate for. Or if they have a sick chicken, they're going to pump a half cc in the breast, give them a pulse shot. That's the extent of their treatment.
Yeah.
And they're going to give LS 50 to their baby chicks right out of the shell. That's the common practice for health.
Yep, I know. And it's not only in small poultry holders, it's also in big commercial companies. I have a client in Ecuador that, he asked me about vaccines all the time, and he said, "Oh, so there's a vaccine for MG. Okay, so I want to use it." And I go like, "You don't have MG, you don't need to use it." And he goes like, "Well, but I want to use it because I want my chickens protected." And I go like, if you use it, they might get sick, right? So you don't have to use all the vaccines that are out there. The same I tell people, that my clients here in Southern California, right? You don't have to use every single vaccine that it's available in the feed store or in online, right? Because some of those vaccines might cause disease on your birds. You only need vaccines are tools, right? You use them when you need them, and then whenever you don't need them, you can take them out, because these vaccination programs are moldable. They need to be flexible. You cannot be using a vaccine forever if you don't need it, and they're expensive, right? So why?
Especially when you have a lot of chickens. Is leukosis a reportable disease?
No, it's not. Not like Newcastle influenza. But then if you take a look at the reportable disease list from CDFA, from the Department of Agriculture, you'll see some diseases that we don't report, like infectious bronchitis, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just that list gets created because of importance. The diseases that we need to report are laryngotracheitis, so ILT, avian influenza, and Newcastle disease.
Yeah.
Those are the three big ones.
Because I call like bronchitis a breeder's disease. I guess I got to add leukosis to that now, being as vertical, huh?
Yeah, I mean, there's others too that we really don't look at all the time, especially in small flocks. So chicken anemia virus, for example, right? The salmonellas, right?
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
if you do things right in your breeder side, you'll have much better progeny, and that's something that you guys need to keep in the back of your mind all the time. And it's not only how you breed and how clean are your breeders, but also how you do stuff.
Yeah. What's that? Uncle Tony doing you a favor, trash some medicines? Oh, I think he's talking about when God, it must have been 30 years ago now. My mentor, he's from South Africa. He's a Oxford Old English judge, but one of the most knowledgeable people of chickens that I ever knew. And he came over to my yard and was looking at my chickens, and I had sick chickens. And this is common for a lot of people, is they think having sick chickens is just part of it's common practice. You're just going to have it and get all the medications you can. You just take care of it. Running a hospital is a common thing. It's just you accept it. And I did. I had every medication you could think of. I had sick chickens here and there. And he came over and says, "What's going on here?" And I go, "Don't worry, Tony. I got this all handled. I got all the medications." And he said, "Let me see what you got." So I took him in the shed, showed him my medication. He started looking at them. He started throwing them in the trash can. Wham, wham, wham. And I was about ready to have a spasm, because I just like, I can imagine I'm going to have to buy all these. I didn't want to disrespect him, so I didn't want to say nothing, but I was freaking out. And he goes, "Kenny, Uncle Tony just did you a favor. Breed to the healthy, get rid of the sick. and you'll be fine. And you know, for about 4 or 5 years, I just kept culling all the sick, and I felt like I was culling most of them there for a while, and it got better. And to this day, I don't worm my birds. I don't treat my
Mm-mm.
birds. I never have a sick bird anymore. But when I do, I just get rid of it. And you know what? I've got some of the healthiest chickens out there, and I don't vaccinate or medicate. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, there's extremes, right? I think that it's always good to have tools, and those tools might help you sometimes. Uh, I'm also not the kind of person that will be treating birds out there, because the physiology of chickens is so complex that whenever the chickens get sick, is because they're most of the times they're going to die.
Yeah.
So a bad respiratory disease in chickens is death. And if you keep them alive, usually what you do is just disseminate more the disease if it's an infectious disease. So, and that's simple, right? The reason is because the respiratory and the locomotory system are connected. So if you have, respiratory disease, that virus or bacteria will go up to the bones. And treatment wise, like if you give them antibiotics, that antibiotic doesn't have good irrigation in uh in bones, and also in the air sacs. So the air sacs are air sacs. They don't have blood vessels that you can see, right? So the amount of drug that can penetrate into the air sacs is very low, or into the bones. So it's really difficult to treat. Having that said, if you have, let's say, parasite infection, roundworms, you can treat that, right? If you have, other kind of respiratory diseases that are more located in the upper respiratory tract, you can also treat that. So it's just a matter of knowing what's going on, and then knowing what you can do. Not all diseases are treatable in chickens because of their physiology,
Yeah.
and so we don't have to abuse on treatment.
Now, there was one time I talked to you, and it was a couple years ago. But at that time, you said in your whole career you'd only prescribe antibiotics maybe 6 times.
Yeah, and that's true, right? I mean, I'm not I do more consulting work than actually primary veterinary care in a company. So I treat less than other people. But as I said, like, sometimes I you have to realize that things are not treatable. And nowadays there's many more things that are non-antibiotics and vaccines that you can use in order to, medicate, right? We know that there's certain things that are good to treat, viral diseases, like oregano oils and apple cider vinegar. We know that apple cider vinegar is good for the intestine of the chickens in order to keep bad bacteria out, right? Like salmonellas and campylobacter. So so I'm not saying that you need to run constantly apple cider vinegar, but those are the things that you can use in order to, treat your chickens and keep them healthy, rather than, blasting lincomycin and trying to get rid of mycoplasmas, right?
I've got
Yeah.
a couple of questions for you. So, can this virus be killed by the sun?
I would say that every virus is able to be killed by the sun if the exposure is long enough. That's why when I mentioned that you might need to move your
Hmm.
crates or your cages from place, it's good to have a rotation system in which you're able to move cages from one place to the other and let the land sit a little bit. That's what we call downtime period in commercial poultry, and downtime period has a really good action in terms of controlling all these round non-envelope viruses, which are those viruses that cause a lot of severe diseases, intestinal diseases, and other issues. So one of my favorite recommendations is don't have more chickens than the ones that you can handle.
That's good
And
advice.
and
That you
that
have room for. Yeah.
exactly, and that would be one of the things that I mostly see in game fowl breeders.
Yeah.
Like I've been into farms that are, or backyards that are the size of this office, and I can see 1,000 chickens, right? Well, that's the, it's a recipe for disaster, because
Yeah.
you cannot clean, you cannot feed, you cannot let the land sit a little bit, you cannot do anything. You're just breeding and culturing catastrophe in
No,
general.
I know it's a slow moving disease, but what's the incubation period? And if I was going to quarantine birds, how long should I quarantine them for?
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, right? I mean, the virus gets transmitted vertically, and then you don't really see disease
Yeah,
until they are more than 16 weeks.
that's right.
So that's why it's kind of like silent and masked.
Yeah.
And also, like all these diseases might also have a relation with other diseases that are causing problems, like bursal disease or chicken anemia virus, which are not really studied or understood on backyard flocks. We know a little bit more in commercial poultry, and we know that they're all associated. Bursal disease, for example, affects the bursa fabricius, so it's actually doing a similar thing than ALV, which is depleting lymphocytes and transforming those lymphocytes into tumors, right? Uh, so and chicken anemia virus does the same thing, but with T cells, right? So affects the thymus. So then it might have an incidence with Marek's disease. These correlations between diseases and pathogens are very interesting to me, but at the same time they're very difficult to understand, and they depend a lot on the management. So those things might be different for Gamefowl reality.
Now, General Patton here is talking about a program that I have as far as quarantining. It's a 30-30-30 rule. You quarantine them 30 feet, 30 yards, whatever, as far away as
Yeah.
possible from your chickens for 30 days. If they don't seem to show any symptoms, put in a sacrificial bird. If that doesn't show anything, then you're probably okay. But like Dr. Gallardo was saying, in this case, it's vertical. You're not going to know until they produce offspring and see what happens as they're growing and developing. So that makes it really difficult.
But you can test them, right?
Yeah.
So if you approach to your state laboratory and ask them if they have any test to test for leukosis, or they might help you, telling you which ones are positive. But the quarantine thing is really important, and it's not only for leukosis or for Newcastle's, or it's for everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can even see some lameness or genetic thing that you don't want to see in your flock, or almost anything. The same applies to chicks. uh, when you're not hatching chicks with their hen, uh, when you're hatching them in a hatcher or an incubator, you can raise them or brood them separated from the main flock, and that allows your chicks to not to get whatever disease or whatever virus or bacteria your flock is shedding. The best or the most important is Marek's disease, right? Because Marek's disease, no matter if you vaccinate at day of age, those chicks, if you put them in the main flock, they will be exposed to Marek's, and that vaccine doesn't kick in until 7 to 10 days after vaccination. So separating them physically from the flock is also important in order to reduce the exposure that those birds will have. And the immune system of chicks is terrible. It's not good. It's not good until 5 or 6 weeks of age. So they don't have a good cellular response, for example, as far as we know.
Yeah. So Charlie's saying I'm receiving birds this coming month. What recommendations? What do you
Well,
think?
quarantine them,
Yep.
and then if you're receiving them this month, talk with the owner of those birds, and then see if you can do some testing on them. It doesn't mean that you're gonna tell the person that is selling you the birds, like, I don't want them. It it, it will mean that you will know what you're buying, right? And it's all an economical decision, right? It's risks. Like, if you're buying a bird that physically looks like you want your birds to look, but it's positive to MG, well, you'll know that your flock will be positive to MG, and you can probably take precautions, right? It's just an economical decision, how much you can pay or how much you can control with whatever you're buying.
That's if they're honest, because not very many people are going to be honest with the health of their birds, the history of their birds.
And let me tell you, like, if I ask someone, like, if I'm going to buy a car, right, and I tell the owner of the car, like, can I take it to a mechanic before buying it, and he or she tells me no, I probably won't
Yeah.
buy it, right?
Yeah.
You
So
know, my advice is spread out your pens. You got your brood pens, you've got your grow out flocks or whatever. Spread them out so they're not so enclosed with each other, because one pen getting the virus will mutate to the next pen if they're like really close together. Am I making sense with that?
But you're walking that disease into those pens too when you're taking care of them.
So at the
Yeah.
end, it's exposure, how clean your environment is. If you have more birds in a reduced space or surface, they'll be more exposed to pathogens and they will be more sick. If you spread them, if you have brooders on one side, adults on the other side, you can manage that. You can attend the chicks in the morning, then change your clothes and shoes, and then attend the breeders in the afternoon. Right? So you're doing biosecurity. You're doing actually practical biosecurity. If you have cows and chickens, right? You don't want to transmit cow disease to chickens or the other way around. Now with avian influenza, that is also affecting cows. So you need to separate processes. And also you need to be able to let the land sit and these viruses disappear by the action of, disinfectants, but also, sun rays and dryness, right? So you need to be able to manage your flocks adequately.
Do you know that much about Lyme? The effects of Lyme and controlling disease?
I hear a lot about Lyme. I'm not sure about its action. So I in commercial poultry in the US, we use a lot of acid, which is this PLT. I don't know if you've heard about it, poultry litter treatment, which is basically an acid that what it does is it was created to destroy bacteria that was able to break up ammonia or nitrogen and then generate ammonia, right? So in commercial poultry, we don't want ammonia because ammonia affects the respiratory tract, and then there's viruses that come and affect them. But then this ammonia or this acid has the capability of reducing the pathogen load, so it kills any bacteria or viruses. Now, in certain areas of the world, like Latin America, there's no PLT available, no acid, no acidifiers. So they use lime, and lime is a base. So I'm not sure what the base do to these viruses or bacteria, to be honest with you.
My understanding is it changes the pH of the soil, but I'm not sure how it affects the disease itself.
So we've tested acids, this PLT, in the lab, and we know that it kills avian influenza. We know that it kills some of the round viruses, but we haven't really tried Lyme. So I'm not sure. In the practicality, so I've seen flocks treated, bedding material treated with lime, and those that lime doesn't really break the problems, the intestinal problems that acidifiers do. So, but again, I'm that's from experience. It's not from lab work.
Yeah, because I don't really have good experience with that. Although I do lime my pens a couple times a year.
I would do it.
Recommend it and everything, but because I don't have sick chickens or having really issues, so I don't know if it's helping or hurting or anything. So
I would do it anyways. I mean, if you think about if it's a strong base, it might have an effect on viruses and bacteria.
Yeah.
But when I haven't tested, so I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Any other questions, Nancy? Because we're right at an hour.
Yes, I got two more questions, but I've been wanting to say this. You know what I think is great about this is the Breeders Academy and the Bred Perfection Live. We're getting out to the masses these different diseases, and breeders, you need to be educated in all of these diseases so that you can recognize what's going on in your yard. Okay, so that's
we're talking. Go ahead.
That at the end we end up talking about the same thing, right? Biosecurity, management.
We do.
Which is simple, right? I mean, are those kind of things that you can do, and they cross protect, right?
And it's the thing they never want to do. They never want to take the time to do. You know what I mean?
Because it takes time and effort.
Yeah.
And we are by nature lazy, right?
Yeah. But it's one of the most important. You're going to have to deal with it later if you don't deal with it now.
Like I was telling Dr. Gallardo earlier, is that we really appreciate that he comes on the show, because we're getting really good advice, expert advice. He's a great authority. There's a lot of bad information out there. We call them medicine peddlers, where they not only can't pronounce the disease they're dealing with, but they're not able even to pronounce the medications that they're selling. And so, with all this bad information, it's no wonder that we're still dealing with diseases the way we are. And we need Dr. Gallardo and more like him to get the information out so that we're on top of it and doing it properly. So, I really appreciate that he comes on our show and does this.
Yes. And guys out there, if you're listening, make sure that you share, subscribe, and like if you enjoy what we're discussing here. More people need to know about this.
Did you say there's more questions before we wrap it up?
Yes.
Okay.
There's two. My question is this virus transmitted to any other types of birds, or it's just chickens?
There's some types. I told you guys that there were like 10 different types from A to
Yes.
J. Some of those types, which I don't remember from the top of my head, can affect chickens and also other species of birds.
Okay, so duck breeders and geese breeders and people like that, they still need to be aware of this virus.
Exactly, and that's one of the reasons why it's never a good idea to raise different bird species together. Especially, I mean, I always refer to avian influenza, right? I mean, waterfowl and chickens, right? Ducks and chickens, quails and chickens, turkeys, from the most part, are also very, very susceptible. So if you think about avian influenza, you have quails as very, very susceptible. And then turkeys, but then ducks are also extremely susceptible.
Are they really?
Because they usually don't get sick, but they can get infected and amplify the infection. Nowadays, everything is getting sick from AI, to be honest with you. But in the past, we used to have a lot of outbreaks in quails, in turkeys, and in ducks without chickens being affected.
And ostriches as well.
Ostriches are somewhat susceptible too. The thing is that there's not many ostrich farms anymore in the U.S. But yeah, they are susceptible. They get severely infected.
I don't know what that is.
Do you know what that is?
So, referring to ALV or in general?
I don't even know what he's talking about. So
I hadn't heard of that one, but I'm kind of interested as to what that word means.
So erythroblastosis, maybe it's linked to one of the outcomes of ALV infection. So erythroblastosis is an affection of the red blood cells, right? And in general, it can be related with tumor formation from red blood cells or crenation of red blood cells, which means they get disintegrated. I'm not familiar with any outcome. I mean, it might be an outcome from ALV, to be honest with you, because there's several different presentations, as many as different types of ALV they are. So I'm not that familiar with it, and I don't have a context to give an opinion from that word. But the word means, right, blasting erythrocytes, which are red blood cells.
Is there anything you want to say to wrap it up? So, lasting message about leukosis? Can you hear? Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking about the erythroblastosis because
I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was done, but not. But now that I think about it, it's one of the clinical repercussions of some of the ALV types. There's one that causes, and I think I mentioned it, myelocytomatosis, which is a liver affection, and you have this pinpoint bloody lesions in the liver. The erythroblastosis is also a clinical outcome from some of these ALV infections.
Oh, so they're kind of connected.
Well, so while ALV or avian leukosis is the disease, erythroblastosis is one clinical outcome. Meaning, like, you have a herpes infection, and then dryness in your mouth is the clinical outcome. So the erythroblastosis would be the clinical outcome of some infections with ALV. I don't know if that was clear.
No, I get that.
That makes sense.
Okay. Anything else about the ALV? I don't really think so. I mean, the most important things, right? Vertically transmitted. If you want to control it, you need to test your breeders. The way to control it is eradication, so meaning that you need to eliminate the ones that are positive in order to avoid vertical transmission. It's not really good in terms of disseminating horizontally, even though it does it. And if you compare it with Marek's disease, which clinically they can look the same, leukosis affects older chickens compared with Marek's that affects younger chickens. And usually the limit, the limit of age is 16 weeks of age.
Okay. Awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show, Dr. Gallardo, and I can't wait to do this again. And I think this is going to wake a lot of people up. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for the invitation. Always fun to discuss these things with you
Yeah,
guys.
this was a great show. I wasn't sure how it was going to go because I didn't know that much about it other than I knew it wasn't a good disease and other people were getting it. So, yeah, that's awesome. You want to say anything, Nancy? Wrap it up?
No, just guys, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Join the Breeders Academy. Join us there. You're going to get lots of great information. You have Kenny at your fingertips. He'll be there for you at any time you need him. And make sure that you join us. I think next week we're going to be back to Tuesday at 6:00 for our next show. I'll give
We're all
out
over the place right now.
I know. I'm
because of
so
the-
sorry. I will give out notifications to remind you of when that will be. So we appreciate you all being here.
Okay. So thanks a lot, Dr. Gallardo. And thank you, everybody, for showing up and giving your questions. And can't wait to do it again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye, guys.